Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of Health Wealth. We've got another guest with us this week, Christine Mullaney. Got the pronunciation right there.
Indeed, you did.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Been a nice day. Getting over just coming back to Ireland from the south of Spain and reclimatizing, but I'm in good form. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
That's all right. That's quite a different climate there, south of Spain to Ireland.
Is it what?
Oh, well, let's hope we can bring some sunshine with this podcast.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah. So we're just going to find a bit about you today and some of your story. So I think we could start by if you share a little bit about what you do, because that's quite interesting.
Such a broad question. I work with bilingual professionals, so generally people whose first language isn't English, as a coach and trainer. And the areas that I coach in is something that a term I've coined. The term exists to an extent, but not the way that I use it, called neurocultural communication. So a blend of the brain, culture, and communication with presentation skills, with general communication skills, and English pronunciation and public speaking. So I kind of have a blended background from an academic perspective and experiential perspective. I've studied and trained in all the areas that I coach, as well as worked in them. My master's is in business, but I'm a trained English language teacher, speech and drama teacher, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit varied. Generally, what I do is help people with confidence, to be totally honest. People will come, I need to speak more clearly. I need to understand how the British, the Irish, the Americans, the Australians, the Canadians communicate, because I don't get what they're saying. They're so indirect. And so I do that, but there's so much more depth to it. So it's based on 4 pillars of awareness. Self-awareness first, looking in at ourselves, understanding ourselves, finding our own resonance. Brain awareness, not from a freaky, scary science perspective, although yes, there is science involved in it. Cultural awareness and linguistic awareness. And by looking at all those 4 areas and expanding the self and the mind, confidence is developed, clarity of expression, presence and poise, so that people can take the reins in their own careers and control their own growth and development.
Amazing. That sounds great. So would that be people who are doing kind of public speaking and things like that?
It can be, yeah, it entirely depends. Some of my clients are even actually in Toastmasters, and they come to me to develop their public speaking skills to a different degree. Others are working mostly in tech and STEM organizations, so working globally across cultures in generally American firms run in English. And so they need to develop their skills to be able to manage and build relationships across those cultures. But it largely depends. Yeah.
Okay. So potentially it's someone coming to you who English is not their first language, and they need to build confidence communicating in English instead of their own.
Yeah, and they would be advanced to proficient the language. They come and they don't want to learn the language. They're not coming to learn the actual language itself. Yeah, I can do that, and I've done it in the past, and if someone really begs me, I might give in. But there's a difference between language capacity or language proficiency and communication proficiency. You can be able to speak a language, even so-called native speakers, and this is a loaded term that I really don't like. So-called native speakers need to develop their communication skills. Doesn't matter that they've grown up speaking English. When they walk into a communication engagement and there are 10 different nationalities in that environment, do they really know how to communicate with each different nationality in a way that they can be heard, listened to, and respected? And that's part of the work that I do.
Yeah, that's very true. A lot of people can speak a language, but whether they can communicate well in it would be a different question entirely. What's kind of the first, when people come to you, where do you start from? What's your base of kind of building their confidence and their awareness in those different areas?
Well, what I would say is that I don't build their confidence, they build their confidence. I facilitate the space for them to be able to do so when they're open to doing it and to going on the journey. We start by looking inside. I actually get them to do something called the SCARF assessment. So it comes from a place called the Neuro Leadership Institute. It was part of my initial neuro language coaching training. The SCARF is basically, it's based on the human drivers. So you've probably heard them in some respect. I know that, do I even want to say this person's name? Because I'm not a big fan. So somebody very famous for them would be Tony Robbins, right? He talks about the different things that drive people. He wasn't the first to talk about this, and he certainly won't be the last. He just is very good at marketing it. But the SCARF is an acronym for something that's very easy to remember, the scarf that we wear around our necks. S being for status, C being for certainty, A being for autonomy, R for relatedness, and F for fairness. Generally, even going back to the origins of speaking training and persuasive and influential training, going back to the Stoics, they will tell you that when you appeal to reason and you appeal to emotion, you can persuade and influence a person. It's no different today than it was way back then. Those 5 drivers exist within all of us. If we begin to become aware of them within ourselves first, right? What's driving me in this situation, in this moment? Somebody said something in the meeting that's really fired me up. It's got me annoyed. Where's that coming from? What's that trigger? I'm just going to just interrupt this for a second. I've realized I've left the window open. Are you hearing a noise in the background?
There's
No.
Nothing coming through. No.
Okay, great. Just in case, because there's no point in these noises. I'm in the Irish countryside. If you hear cows in the background or something. So yeah, you're in the meeting or you're in any communication engagement. Something's made me annoyed right now. What is it that they said that has annoyed me and upset me? And where's the trigger coming from? When we start to become aware of that inside ourselves, we can regulate our emotions. Am I annoyed because they've damaged my ego? Do I feel left out? Am I uncertain about what's happening right now? Do I need more data? And is this causing me not to be able to pay attention? That's where we start. Doesn't always happen immediately. The first thing I get them to do is that, because it brings in the awareness. But as you know, with health, it's the same kind of thing. We might be brought into the awareness of something, but that doesn't mean that we know how to do it right away. We need to be re-exposed to it and maybe learn more about it and read or hear other people give testimony to it. Over time, that develops into, okay, yeah, now I'm aware of this scarf stuff. How do I deal with this person? I can't figure them out in this meeting. Where would you put them on the scarf? Right, I forget all about the scarf. Can we talk about that again now? So the brain and self is where we start. It largely depends on the person, where it goes and how long it takes. Some people, especially if they're sponsored by an organization, come into a coaching engagement not understanding why they're in it. You know, some see it as a gift. Wow, this is a great opportunity for development. I'm open, I'm ready, let's go. Others, this is an hour out of my time every week. I'm really busy. I don't have time for it. Why am I here? Okay, then it's my job to persuade and demonstrate to them to some degree, what they don't know. As they start to see that and how beneficial it can be from a strategic communication perspective, they start looking at me like, Christine, I never thought about this before. Nobody's ever said this before. I'm like, okay, great, let's go. Now I got you. What can we do to make this help you expand? Long-winded answer to your where do you start question.
No, that's a very good answer. That's very good, very detailed. Yeah, it's has a lot of similarities to I had some kind of mindset coaches and people like that on before, and they do a similar thing where they sort of start by trying to find people's value system, which kind of seems similar to self-awareness, you know, what makes them tick and things like that. So I think that's always a great place to start from when you're improving anything. I think
I sort of think yes and no on the values. I mean, we do have inherent values and values we've developed inside since we were young. Sometimes those values can change depending on the situation we're in. the people we're communicating with. And when we put our own values first all the time, we don't pay attention to the values of others. And that's what I mean about the self-awareness and then the brain awareness. When we bring in that brain awareness, right, I'm aware of myself and my triggers in this environment. But what do I need to do to communicate differently, to respect the values and the drivers of the other person?
Yeah. So I was going to say, that brings us on to that. So the brain awareness, is that basically seeing what the triggers would be for the other person so you can communicate effectively to them?
In part, it's emotional regulation. So today, let's use an example of today. I had a client and he loves learning about the brain. And he was somebody who took time to convert to the process. I won't give any more information about him because obviously I don't have his permission, but it took time to convert. And now he's totally into it. The promotion has come. We're going for another promotion. That's where you get the excitement. But we're talking about stress today and emotional regulation and being able to decompress. So in that, we talk about the brain, and I started to mention the prefrontal cortex and the front part of our brain, the analytical decision-making part of our brain, which evolved last and actually only makes up 4% of our brains. And yet we put so much pressure on it. And so then you get to lean in. Hang on a second, you said this part, the part that where we make decisions and we analyze, it's only how much? It's only 4% of our brain. And we put over 100% of pressure on it all the time. Imagine if we had a table and we put 100% of. Yeah. So what do you think we do to our brains? Did I break up there again?
So yeah, just only for a second. Yeah.
Okay, so we're all right. Well, hopefully it'll stay okay, that connection. I don't know why it's going. Yeah, so the brain part is awareness of the self and your brain, your emotional triggers, awareness of the triggers and the emotions of others, but then also awareness of what causes distress, the function of eustress, the Goldilocks of the brain, as Amy Edmondson calls it, that perfect balance of chemicals in the brain to push us to perform and stretch, but not burn us out. And when we can hit burnout, what we can do, how we can restore the brain, cognitive downtime, being able to manage the emotions of others, consciousness and learning. There's a lot that can come up. It depends on what the person needs and wants in that moment, but that's part of it.
Yeah, the brain's a very intricate thing. There's a ton that can be learned and explored about it. It's every time I find new stuff out about the brain, it always amazes me, the things. I think there's so much that we don't even know about it yet. We're discovering.
Sure, and that's the brain in our heads. You, of course, again, being related with health, know that that's not the only brain that we have.
No.
And nor is it necessarily the most powerful brain. The heart and the gut are equally as important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the gut is often referred to as the second brain. Yeah, there's a lot of it's very intricately linked with the brain. So would you, in what you do, would you ever kind of need to bring in any nutrition to what you're doing in terms of with helping people mentally?
Yeah, funny, today we talked about reboosting, because obviously if you've gone through a period of stress, or say it's got very busy and the company has put on a lot of pressure suddenly, and people have been pushed into distress over the zone of comfort, not even comfort, the zone of stretch and optimal performance, then the brain is depleted in glucose. So what do you do to replenish your brain? It's not just about taking cognitive downtime and relaxing. Like, go get some dates or get some figs or Lucozade. I actually was talking about today. Do you have Lucozade in the UK?
Yes, we do.
You do, right? Because the person that I was talking to today, they hadn't heard of it. So I wondered if it's only in Ireland. So it's obviously in England as well. I wonder if it's anywhere else. I mean, that's the glucose boost and sugar, I know. But yeah, so certainly nutrition. there's a respectful boundary to be found, though. It would depend on where we were at in the relationship, where the person wants to go with the coaching. Because if they come in for communication coaching, if they come in for presentation, pronunciation coaching like that, it can move into a personal and life coaching type of session. But like with everything, that needs to be permission-based, right? We're going towards a place here where we could start talking about nutrition, and we could start talking about balancing your diet and balancing your health. And I have done that, even with people whose diets would be very healthy. You know, what are you doing the night before you have to go into the office when you can't sleep? How does your evening end? And they kind of look at you after you've figured out the steps for them, and they've put in new actions into their phone and said, God, it was so simple. I mean, and there's a point then when, you know, a person can sometimes get somewhat embarrassed because it sometimes is so simple. Why did I not see that that wasn't what I was doing, or that I just needed to take those little steps, like scheduled downtime for myself? It's just, that comes with busyness. So yes, we do talk about nutrition in a very respectful way, and always with the comfort and the permission of the client to move into that space.
Yeah, like you said, it's what they don't know what they don't know. I agree that nutrition and health is actually very simple, but unfortunately the knowledge is not out there, which is why that's what we're trying to do with the podcast, is educate people, because what they think is healthy is actually not. And once you know the truth, it is very simple, but unfortunately what people think is right is not, and it's just the lack of knowledge that affects most people.
Yeah, I think there's lack of knowledge. I think, you know, for me, there's being mindful of coming from the ego a little bit here, that I think I know what's best for you, but I don't really know what's best for anybody else. I can only know what's best for me. And sometimes, you know, if you take an example of someone who to my eye may seem unhealthy and overweight. I look at a person and they seem overweight. They're overweight for their size, for their height. And I think, oh, they've got a bad diet. They don't exercise. They don't do this. They don't do that. And then I see them doing box jumps, and they're not sweating. They're sweating well, but they're very comfortable. They're not out of breath. And suddenly there's cognitive dissonance in my brain. And I'm like, how is that happening? But that's judgment. That's me coming from a place of judgment. I don't know anything about them. Maybe they have a thyroid problem and they exercise as much as they possibly can. Their diet is as clean as it possibly can be. And there's something else going on in their body that they haven't yet figured out, or have done as much as they possibly can within the scope of their ability to do something about. And they are where they're at. I don't get to decide what's better for them in that respect.
Yeah, I think everyone is individual, and everyone's story and everyone's journey is individual when it comes to nutrition and health as well. What works perfectly for me may not work perfectly for someone else. So yeah, when we're trying to help people, we always got to find out, as you say, where they're coming from, you know, where they're at now, what their issues are, what they're doing, and then you've got to personalize it to them.
For sure. And, you know, then we can think about things like diets across cultures. Like this whole blood type diet, and what can work for an Asian might not work for a European, and what can work for a Brazilian might not work for an American. You know, when they look at the genetic makeup of different beings, can I go and eat? Well, let's see, I lived in China for a year, right, for example, and there's a lot of white rice in China. You eat a lot of white rice. There's a lot of soy-based products. Some of it is pure soy, some of it is modified. You can't know. And I got puffy when I was there. I still exercised, I still worked out, I still walked, and I did all the things that I normally do. But because there was so much consumption of white rice, there was nothing I could do, but it was happening to me. And now I don't eat white rice. I'll eat brown rice when I eat it in certain proportions. But if I were to eat beans and lentils and pulses every day, or even less than every day, it wouldn't work for my body, because that's not how my body, it's not my makeup. It's not what I've grown up eating. It's not what my body is used to eating. And it's not working with my hormones as I get older. Like I really can't eat meat much anymore at all. I eat very little red meat. I eat a little bit of lamb. I will never stop eating lamb. Those poor baby lambs, but my goodness, they taste so good. But I eat very little meat. My diet it's definitely pescatarian. It's verging on vegetarian, because my body can't handle it anymore. I turned 40 this last month. As I get older, my makeup changes, my hormones change. I need different things. So my diet adapts to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is different, as you say, and you have to adapt and change and keep tweaking. Really, it's very rare that you're going to have a set way of eating and keep exactly that. You have to keep tweaking as you go, especially if you're trying to get to optimal health. So talking of stories, though, I mean, I know you said that you have had some health stories yourself. So if you're happy to share any of them, we'd be interested to hear what you went through yourself and how you solved that.
Yeah, I'll share whatever you want me to share. I have a couple of them. You can choose, or I can share them both, whatever you want.
And I know you said you lost a lot of weight at one point. So yeah, if you want to run us through that.
Right, so we can start there. Up to about the age of 18, I'd say I don't like to do it in sizes, because size is this societal perception, but to give it a visual for people, I was probably about a size 10 up until then, quite relatively athletic, although I started to change my behaviors a little bit around then too. But I was fit, I was comfortable, I had a good, what I would consider a good body, a nice physique. I was in a relationship then for 7 years, which was not the most fantastic of relationships. Over that period of time, it got lazier and lazier. I did less and less. There was a lot of sitting around. There was a lot of takeaway eating, alcohol consumed, and I put on quite a lot of weight. I think I was about, I don't know if I ever weighed myself at the full point of my weight, but I remember when I weighed myself, I think I was 14 or 15 stone. I don't know what that is in kilos. You guys do kilos, don't you? Do you know what that is in kilos? You do stone as well?
Yeah.
What about your listeners? Do they do stone as well?
I don't know, actually. It's probably a mix.
We'll see what that is, just for the listeners, in case. That's not right. Not 15 kilos. I'm wrong then. I'm thinking of the other way around. So it must have been, okay, we'll do it the other way around. Stone to kilo. What do we see? 15. Yeah, no, it can't have been that. That doesn't make sense at all. Sure, I'm 65 kilos now. Yeah, okay. And now I remember. Let's see. There we go. So 75 kilos is 11 stone. No, I was about 13. I'd say 13 odd stone, because I was 11 stone after losing a bit of weight after a couple of years, and I'm 5'7". So I was overweight, unhealthy, and I didn't see it. And I think this is a key thing for people to be aware of, that we often don't see it, and we see what we want to see, don't we? Love is blind, as is fitness and health sometimes.
Yeah.
So I was in this relationship. I didn't see it. And then my sister turned 21, and a photo was taken of us when my sister turned 21. And I looked at the photo and I thought, oh my goodness, I cannot believe I look like that. Even to the point where I was in college, and a girl said to me in college one day, she wasn't that thin herself now, to be fair, but do you know how many calories is in that bag of crisps? And I looked at her and I said, I don't give a flying how many calories in this bag of crisps. I'll eat the bag of crisps if I want. So anyway, relationship finished. As of course happens, you start to reflect on yourself a little bit. Okay, I need to do something about this. I need to start losing weight. So I did a little bit for a while, but I didn't particularly focus on it. And then I moved to Australia. And in my second year in Australia, I lived in the outback. And in the outback, the particular place that I lived, our driveway was over 10 kilometers long. We were 2.5 hours away from town. I was actually helicoptered in the middle of flood season. That was how I entered my job. Are you sure you want to come in now? Because you can't leave for 8 weeks. We have to go in the helicopter. put me in, and no doors on the helicopter, nothing. It was amazing. One of the best years of my life, but one of the most life-changing years. I had my shopping delivered by the postman. There was no such thing as processed crap. You had to figure out what you were going to eat for the week, because the postman came once a week. And so I started to retrain my body and my mind. At the time, this was 2009. Spark Fitness was just starting. I don't know if you've ever heard of the app Spark Fitness, but there were no apps then. That didn't exist. There was the internet, but dodgy internet in the outback. But I became like rigidly disciplined. So I signed up for Spark People. It's one of these things where you can go in and you log all of your food, you log all of your exercise, and I would literally log everything. If I made a curry, I logged down to the most minute ingredient, how I made my curry, saved it as a meal, and that was the same recipe that I used every week. My boss had a treadmill in her house and she didn't use it, so she said, do you want to bring it over? Absolutely. And I would have one in this small little, I lived in like a prefab house, so the kitchen was here, and I know people can't see me. Imagine me on one side of the room, then there was a counter, and then I put on my back.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
you're fine. Yeah.
Breaking the connection there a little bit. And then I put the treadmill beside the counter. So my dinner would be cooking. I'd be on the treadmill. I'd decide a certain distance that I wanted to go, or a certain number of minutes. And I was not allowed to get off that treadmill until I had reached that distance. But it was enough time for my dinner to cook. So I would go, it's a reward system. Yeah, I retrained my brain in different rewards. The reward was a beautiful dinner after I'd finished cooking. I remember going to the library. And this is the middle of the Australian outback, in a place called Richmond in Queensland. And I went in, and somehow there was a DVD. It must have been from a different governess before me, from outside of Australia, of Jeanette Jenkins, the Hollywood trainer. And it was an abs DVD, 25-minute abs DVD. Okay, I'll take that. So I borrowed it. When do I need to leave it back? Oh, don't worry about it. Bring it back whenever you need. Okay, so I had it for the year. But I'll never forget putting that DVD on for the first time. And lying on the floor of that room, I'm not sure I'd ever done crunches in my life before. And I'm watching her lifting up her shoulders and lifting up her body. And literally, if I could demonstrate it for you now, I couldn't lift an inch of myself off the ground. And it's this tiny little, but over time, I started to lift a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And I still have that 25-minute DVD.
Yeah.
Just to remember. So that was that journey. I started that in the outback. I reconditioned my mind. I used to go running then on the driveway as I got fitter, and it was safe to do so because there's snakes. And I did that for the year. I was there for 10 months in the outback. So as soon as I came home from Australia, I joined the gym immediately, and I would go to the gym minimum 5 days a week, and just remained rigidly disciplined to the point where I was still measuring everything. I didn't put it into Spark People anymore, but I could hold in my hand raisins and know that I had the exact calorific quantity that I was allowed for the day. In my mind, I could balance the amount of calories I would take in, balance my diet, and I did not allow myself to do certain things that would give me pleasure until I had done other things that meant that my health and fitness was in check. And I did that for another 4 years, to the point where I got to 15% body fat, athlete fit, and kept at it. Yeah, that was the first change.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think that if we could somehow have a system where everyone could only choose their food once a week and had to plan all their meals, it would help solve a lot of things. I think the majority of people nowadays, they don't even think about their food. They just grab food to eat, and that's it. They don't think about it and plan it. So that, I mean, that's obviously for you, that was huge. And I can see how that would be so beneficial, because people don't think about their food. Once you have to think about it, and obviously you said there was no processed stuff as well, which is a huge benefit. And just by that, remove processed stuff, think about what you're eating, and already you've got a huge improvement to your health.
Sure. Yeah. And not just think about what you're eating. So you've reminded me of other things. Then, of course, you read about what you need to do and what will help. When you go to a restaurant or you go to a buffet, sit with your back to the food, sit with your back to the kitchen, sit with your back to other eaters, reduce the size of your plate, actually eat from a smaller plate or a small bowl. I still do that. I will not eat from these giant dinner plates that we have over here, because I'll just, you eat more. Chew a minimum of 14 times. And when you're finished chewing a minimum of 14 times, connect with your body. I've chewed that piece of food. That food is now entering my body. Actually, as you say, be aware that this self-awareness, brain awareness, physical awareness, aware that you're eating, not just turfing food into
Absolutely.
your mouth. And I can't say I don't do it now. I'm not, nobody's perfect all the time. I certainly chuck stuff into me sometimes, but it's not all the time. And the discipline, it takes time to learn the discipline, to rehabitualize, to reconnect the brain, rewire the brain. But once that's done once, it stays. It's muscle memory. So even if you slip out of it for a day, for a week, even for a number of years through life experience or whatever's going on, the muscle memory's still there. You just got to be kind to yourself and let it come back.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's about forming those routines and habits.
Yeah.
And again, what works for you? It's a personal thing. And even with, the time you eat, how long you leave between eating and stuff, there's different things you can do with that to help. And again, it's what works for you. You set it up to your situation, and you work with it, and you find what works for you, get into your groove. And like you say, once you get going, I don't feel it's that hard to keep going. The beginning is always the hardest, because you're trying to break all the old habits. And once you've kind of broken them, it just becomes normality, it just becomes your normal life.
Yeah, I think I'd jump on the words there that we use, to break a habit. For me, we focus on breaking the habit. We're focusing on trying to change something that's negative. Whereas if we focus instead the brain on creating a new habit, we move ourselves towards a different sense of reward. And there's actually a part of the brain called the reticular activating system. And that's what makes things relevant. So, for instance, I use the word, because I noticed this today about my own brain. So I'll share an example of what I noticed today. I use the word unleash your phenomenal. I have an online training platform of masterclasses on public speaking, pronunciation, communication, and presentation. And it's called Phenomenal Presenters. And I say, unleash your phenomenal. And I'm suddenly seeing the word unleash come in a lot of emails from particularly a shared contact that we have, the rob.team emails. Like, why are you suddenly using unleash? Or did you use it all the time? And has it just become relevant to me now because I'm using it? So the reticular activating system is the part of our brain which manages our filters and makes things relevant. If I decide I want to buy a red car, suddenly red cars are everywhere, because that filtering system in my brain has made them relevant. It's filtered out what's not important. So if I focus on what is, I'm moving to size more, eat more healthily, instead of stop, I'm bringing myself towards the goal and away from that which I wanted to stop anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great way to frame it, because you're coming from a positive place then, like you say. So concentrate on building the new habits as opposed to breaking the old. And I liked what you said about you would reward yourself. You did your exercise first and then you were rewarded with the meal. That's another good way to encourage yourself to be more disciplined, is to have stuff as rewards as well.
And I still do that. I do that with everything. I'm a reward junkie. I do like my rewards, but it's the type of reward. So what is it that I am going to give myself at the end of this that will boost my dopamine, that will make me feel proud of myself, but that won't break what I'm doing, or that won't put me back into that spiral of negative habit that I don't want to be in. And sometimes that reward is something sweet, or a behavior that I have wanted to change, or maybe I want to limit doing. And that's the teaching of the self to balance and to manage, right? Yeah, well, I'm going to have a glass of wine. Okay, great. I'm going to have a glass, not 2 bottles, for instance, for people who drink wine. Or I'm going to have a donut. Right, I'm going to have a donut, but I'm not going to have the whole packet. I'm going to buy 1 donut only instead of buying the pack of 4, because if I buy the pack of 4, the pack of 4 is there, and I'm probably going to let myself eat a second one instead of having only 1. Okay, I've had that one. Now I'll chop it up into small pieces. Actually, this is how I eat my chocolate bars. I put them in the fridge so they're harder and they take longer to chew. And I chop them up into small slices, or sometimes into quarters. If I'm having anything that's not dark chocolate I'll have a proper square, because you're not going to eat a huge amount of that anyway. But yeah, like chocolate bars, I'll chop up. And then I have it like a treat, but it lasts longer because it's in small pieces.
Yeah. That's it. It's finding what works for you.
Yeah.
And it comes back to what you said before about when being present when you're eating and aware. There's actual research that shows that, if you don't have distractions when you're eating, you're not watching the telly or whatever, you concentrate on what you're eating, then you'll actually feel more full and you'll digest it better, quicker and easier, and feel better as well. So just even being aware that you are eating and remove your distractions will even help you.
Yeah, it's the communication between the gut and the brain, because the gut sends more messages to the brain than the brain sends out to the gut. The heart's the same. That communication takes time to reach. It's like picking up a phone and ringing someone and then being on the other side of the house. You got to let it ring for a little while before you make the connection. It's the same thing. I'm eating, I'm chewing, right? I'm chewing now. Okay, now I've swallowed it. Okay, now I've swallowed it. Now it's going down to my stomach, and now it's in my stomach. Now I need to know that it's in my stomach, and then I'm going to digest it. So, it's in there. The Japanese, I think, are very quite famous for this, that they stop when they're 80% full to allow their brains to receive the communication that they have been eating. And then if they need to eat more, fine, they'll eat more, but they stop when they're 80% full.
Yeah, that is a good way to do it. One of the methods that we kind of use if people are struggling to decide how much to eat is you make an amount of food that you think you might eat, but you only give yourself a small portion. The rest is out of sight. You eat that,
I do that.
and then see. And if you're hungry after, fine, eat more. But if you eat that, you might be full, and then you leave the rest for another day. Like you say, when it's in front of you and your eyes can see it, you keep eating even when you're not hungry.
And then you hear people, "Oh, my stomach is so sore. Oh, I'm so full." Yeah, because you've stretched your stomach by consuming more than your stomach actually needed to have. And it suddenly ended up in there. And it's like too, when we eat really fast, there's all these things that you're making me remember now that become just habits, unconscious, that learning scale, unconscious competence is breath, the breathing. When you eat, if you're eating slowly, you're not gulping in a lot of air with the food that you eat. You're consuming the food. So when we eat really fast and we're filling ourselves up with air, expanding ourselves on the inside, the possibility that there's space for more. So more is going in, and then creating that disconnection. It's all about connection though, isn't it? Connection with the self and awareness.
Absolutely. I was the worst for that fast eating. I've had to really try and be aware and try to slow myself down, especially if I'm really hungry. Like if I'm really hungry, it's a meal I like, that that meal is going way too quickly.
Drink it. Let's just blend it. I'll have that in a glass to go, please. I'm gonna just
that's it. Yeah. So you've got to be aware, as you say, and constantly checking yourself. So you said you had another health story too.
Yes.
You wanted to share that?
Yes. Oh, I've also plugged out my light, not to worry. Okay. So this one was a big one, big eye opener for me. I I kind of, what I would say, interesting now, I haven't thought about this in a while. 6 months ago, I would have said that the optimal time in my life was 2014, when I was at that optimal level of health, really disciplined, really fit, really strong. And yet, you know, I could still go and party once a month and enjoy myself, and that was fine. Now I actually wouldn't say that that was the optimal time in my life, because I think I'm going towards the optimal time in my life again, which is a lovely thing to realize. So thank you for the space to recognize that. In the mid 2010s, can I say that? Yeah. I got into a relationship that ended up being quite a toxic relationship, and resulted in me not losing completely my health and fitness. I was still quite fit and healthy. I still exercised, but not to the degree that I exercised before. I still had a good diet. But in 2021, I was living in my ex's home country. I had just got back with him again at the end of 2020 and stopped listening to my body again. My body was screaming, no, don't do this again. You were out, you were healing. No. So at the end of January 2020, and this is all about kind of the holistic connection. It's not just diet. It's also trauma. It's also emotional connection. Something happened over there that triggered a kind of a trauma that I hadn't dealt with in my life from when I was a teenager, and put me in a state of significant mental threat and survival mode. My body completely and utterly reacted. And it was a combination of that, of diet. I was being very well looked after, right? I can't deny that, and I don't ever want to knock the people. But there was too much fat in the food. There was too much wheat. It was all dumplings made of pure wheat, served with sugar on top of them. And it's kind of like the Irish way. I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but if there's a grandmother or a mother feeding you, you don't say no, especially in a culture where there has been near starvation because of war, and you respect food and the food that you're given. So I would say no as best they possibly could, but to a degree. And over time, my body just completely and utterly shut down. It blocked, it shut down. I started to be cyclically ill. So I would get up one morning and I'd start to vomit, and I wouldn't stop for 16, 18 hours. I couldn't stop my body. No matter what I did, take different things, try different drinks, it just would keep going. And then the next day, stop. I looked completely different to how I look now. So you add like, I don't know, 3 or 5 layers of bloat. My face was completely swollen. Do you know who I saw yesterday in a picture, actually, that reminded me a bit of it? Mike Myers. So anybody who's listening, right, Google Mike Myers. And I'm sorry, Mike Myers. I love Austin Powers. That's why I was looking him up. But he looks like that. He looks pale and gaunt and swollen, like there's something going on. And you can actually see the dimming of the light in the person, the trauma. But on top of that, I was scaled like a lizard. So my entire chest, all under my eyes, around my face and my ears, was flaked skin, red. And it was so painful and so depressing. I didn't know what to do. I was over in Poland. I didn't speak the language, and the area that I was in, not a lot of people spoke the language either. So I got support and help as much as I could get, but I also had to go alone to a lot of different things. I went to a dermatological specialist. I was very lucky that they had a family friend who was in his 70s, was a dermatological specialist. So he took me to see him. And because I didn't have the links and connections to holistic therapy and holistic care that I would have had in Ireland, I had to go the medical route. So I was put on steroids, steroid creams, steroid, everything you can bloody imagine. Steroids, right? Destroying my body from the inside out. And it wasn't working. I mean, it would come down. Yeah, the cream would reduce the flare in my eyes, but nothing fixed it. And that's why I say it's not just diet. It's also about stress and about trigger and about threat and about trauma. Eventually, later in the year, I went home to Ireland for a month to see my family, but also to try and figure out and to heal. I went and I got the standard blood tests. I actually was in hospital 2 days after I got back. The same thing, really, really sick. I got the tests for what's wrong with your diet, what can't you eat, what can you eat, this kind of crack. And it all came back. Like there were a certain number of things, casein in the casein in cheeses, but cheeses from cows. Sheep were fine and goats was fine. Everything else was all right. The things that I thought it probably was, gluten, anything like that, none of it was the problem. And so I spent a month at home with my family. And after a month, I was not back to, I won't go to say normal, but my usual self, but I was significantly improved. My skin was down. I hadn't been sick again. So I had to realize that there was something emotional as well as the diet. And I did change my diet in Ireland, of course. I cut out all gluten anyway, regardless of whether or not it was that. Ultimately, at the end of September, I left the relationship and I'm in Ireland. And that was September 2021. So you're looking at me now and you can see that clearly everything has been healed and changed. I did not take any medication to do this. I did not use any more steroids or any more steroid creams or none of that crack that they give you to, let me see, how do I say this? I understand that it works for some people. I understand that it helps some people, but it doesn't fix the root cause. And the root cause generally in this kind of situation is either a traumatic event and the brain being in survival mode constantly, which causes a disconnection between the brain. And when that disconnect happens, the body explodes. As Gabor Mate would say, the body says no. We find that disconnection in ourselves. But also then the food that is being put into the body, yes, no doubt what is it, over 95% of our serotonin, they believe, is given to our brains by our food. So this whole idea of you are what you eat, you feel what you eat, maybe I'm going to say, rather than you are, that change back to taking out all the wheat, taking out the dumplings, the noodles, the white processed, refined products and refined foods, and going back to the earth where I had grown up. And when I was a child, if we said to Mommy, we're hungry, she'd say, go out in the garden and pick a carrot. Your dinner's not until 6 o'clock. That's what you did. You went out and you picked a carrot, you washed it under the tap and you ate it. So I went back to very clean, very earthly, unprocessed diet. I went to therapy. I worked through the traumatic experiences that I'd been through. I did my TEDx talk. I shared my story because it's really important that we share and we don't repress what's happening inside us, because repression, research has found, causes our bodies, of course, to say no again and explode in different ways. Different challenges come up, like fibromyalgia and endometriosis, and all these different things can be caused by repression. And others, maybe I won't say because we don't want your podcast blocked for misinformation.
We're probably already flagged.
Yeah, but that's because the FDA won't make any money.
Yeah.
You can cut that bit if you have to. But yeah, so I've spent the last whatever months we're on now, we're nearly hitting 2 years, July, August, September. So it's 24 to 21 months. Holistically healing my mind, healing my spirit. I walked the Camino de Santiago, all 790 kilometers, to move back out of my survival mode from my head into my heart, retrust myself again, listen to my instincts, retrust people again, and heal all three, because they all work in combination, mind, body, and spirit.
Absolutely, they're completely linked. And I think a lot of stomach and digestive issues, while as you say, down to diet. A lot of that is massively impacted by stress as well. It's, you know, the mental and the physical, you can't separate them. They're all the same. And as you say, the soul, the spiritual as well is a part of it. If you've got peace there, then you're going to be mentally in a much better place. So yeah, I'm completely I love hearing your story, and I completely understand how that works so much better than the medical. I'm also not a fan of the medical industry at all. As you alluded to before, they treat symptoms, they don't treat causes. So yeah, they can give you steroids and a steroid cream that will help with the symptoms, but it's just going to come back and come back. Plus you get side effects from the steroids. Everything can be healed with, you know, with diet, as you say, with, you know, getting yourself mentally and spiritually in the right place, your diet, and, you know, and herbal remedies where needed. But everything can be healed by that. There's no need, I think, for conventional drugs in pretty much anything.
So I will never use a universal qualification, and I just did. So I'm contradicting myself. Never. I am not a fan of universal qualification. So everything, all, never, because, as we said, everybody is individual, and each thing is different. So I'm reading When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate at the moment. And I read these kinds of books over time. They can be taxing on the brain, but I also read them as if I were a student. So I study them and I make notes and I apply them to my existence and my reality, my experience. But he's done a lot of work on ALS patients. And so, you know, that Ice Bucket Challenge made ALS famous a number of years ago. But they have not been able to find a way, even through talk therapy, to heal ALS patients once they get to a certain point. So it might be easy for me to say everything could be healed, but I don't know. I'm not a medical practitioner, and I haven't studied all diseases to the degree that somebody like Gabor Mate has. I haven't worked in the field to the degree that somebody like him has, or Bessel van der Kolk the same. I would love to believe that everything can be healed. I'd be more inclined to maybe say, if I'm going to use a universal qualification, everything can be prevented with more awareness early on, with more openness, with more space and psychological safety for people to share, not to repress. With ALS, what they found from reading his work is that it tends to hit people who are very nice. And what they mean by people who are very nice is people who don't know how to say no. So they don't have a boundary up that allows them to say no and to be in themselves and do what is right for themselves. They will always put other people first all the time. So that's what it seems to be connected with in many ways. But when you get to a certain point in life, it's a lot of work to work through your shit. And that's the best way to put it. It's painful. It's hard. It hurts. You have to cry. You have to acknowledge the pain. Recognize your own actions and behaviors in the cause and creation of the pain. Recognize what wasn't healed before and do the work to heal now something that may have happened 20 or 30 years ago. Not a lot of people are willing to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said there, prevention, that's the easiest way to not have the illness is prevention. If you're living right in the first place, if you've got everything lined up, your health, your mental, then you're not going to end up with these, you know, the majority of the health conditions we see today. If you go back, you know, 100,000 years before we were eating processed foods, you know, they didn't exist. So we're poisoning ourselves essentially. And like you say, prevention's better than cure, and it's a lot easier.
Yeah, but there's an argument on both sides of everything. They didn't have great teeth then either, you know. So there are developments.
That was after the introduction of brains. but before that, they were fine.
When you think about it, though, there are developments that we have had which have allowed us to get to places that have been beneficial and helpful. And so to knock an industry completely because big players who want to line their pockets are making it something very negative, I don't agree with. There is space for medical care. There's space for medical health. And there are plenty of practitioners and doctors out there who are coming from a holistic point of view now, who are open to having conversations, who want to treat the symptoms and find a cure for what's underlying. But we're talking about systemic problems in society, and I use the word society very lightly because society is questionable. You know, if we want to talk about prevention, we're looking at re-educating people before they become parents and helping them to parentify themselves again, or reparent themselves again. Those who have not healed their own conditions, or who have not healed through the generations of their conditions long before us. Or, well, we know, in my belief, I'm unstable again, I see that. Do you know what? You'd have to wonder. Now, here's a bit of conspiracy for you. Is that Zoom, when I start talking about these words that they don't like, and making the connection?
That's it, they're cutting you out.
Like, oh, shut her up. Yeah, so you know, there's healing in the present. There's healing going back through generations, long before us, healing those genes and those gene threads, and actually changing, karmically changing what has come before. I read an article once that talks about when you shift, when you make a karmic change in your body, you get like this whole shiver all over your body, as if almost you've washed a wave of something off yourself from the past. So prevention, I think, involves two sides. One, helping the present generations to heal, and two, teaching new generations to think differently.
Yeah,
and finding a way to blend them.
I agree completely. It's education is key. That's absolutely key. I do agree. And very hard because, as we all know, everything goes back to money, and the money talks. And unfortunately, the message that makes them lots of money is one that also makes us unhealthy. So we're fighting against the grain. So it's hard to get it out there, but you know, we're trying.
We are, and that's all we can do. Keep talking, keep sharing. I do think there's been a revival of connection with the earth, connection with the self. You know, everything's a spiral. Everything goes around in a circle, and we seem to be in a phase. They say it's the age of Aquarius this year, and that we've entered into a new shift and a new phase. Well, we seem to be in that phase where we are turning back towards the earth, towards that which we originally came from, and understanding and realizing that if we don't reconnect with spirit and with that which is inside us anyway, with nature, we are nature, we are all one with nature, that we're gone. And nature's going to be here long after us, because it was here long before us. This whole idea, I wrote a comment recently on a post from Trinity College last week. They posted this wonderful video about biodiversity and how they stopped mowing the lawn in Trinity College. And because they stopped mowing the lawn, an orchid, which is an ancient orchid, has grown. And not only one, but 2 or 3 of them. And isn't it incredible? And it's such a demonstration that when we leave nature to itself, what will grow and what will happen. And I couldn't stop myself from commenting. I was like, yeah, this is lovely. It's beautiful to know that this has grown. But what is the reason that we need a demonstration for nature to do exactly what we have known for thousands of years that nature does by itself? And that is flourish when we don't trample on it.
Yeah.
So I think we're on the way back. It's possibly not going to be in our generation. I think you're a bit younger than me, but I still think probably around similar.
Yeah, it's going to take time. I agree. I think I agree with you. I think especially the last kind of couple of years, as everything that's gone on, I think has woken up a lot of people to the fact that they need to take a bit more personal responsibility for their health and start to, as you say, become more aware of things and go back to, you know, nature and trying to live as nature intended us to, because if we live like that, that you've got a lot less issues going on, and people have realized that actually the governments and everyone else in charge, they're not interested in your well-being. You have to be interested in your well-being. You have to take control of it.
Yeah, that's ever there was a message to get out there, that's the message. You get to control what you are, how you live, and your sense of self. But again, it's a hard thing. So a lot of people just comfortable. You know what? I know I could do that. I've got a remote. And this is really easy to just press that button there, and then all those worries go away for a few hours. And that's fine. Each to their own. If that's fine. No judgment from me. If you want to sit and do that with your life, you sit and do that with your life. We all have our own goals and our own aspirations. Who am I to decide what's better for you or not? I know what works for me. And I know that to take a break in the middle of the day, I'm blessed to be able to walk outside and pick raspberries because my sister has bushes dripping with them. And I feel like I'm 10 again. It's great. That's what works for me.
Yeah.
And the sea, the Irish Sea particularly. I love the sea.
Yeah. That's it. Nature is good for us. Getting people out in nature, in the sun, in the fresh air, touching the ground is, it's important. It helps us. And things like grounding, with connecting with the earth, that's scientifically has a benefit for us. It's not just, oh, you feel good. It's, this stuff is natural, and it's how we're meant to live. Yeah.
It's a microbiome that's been found in muck that increases our serotonin levels in our brain. And of course, the grounding is a magnetic connection with the core of the planet. We are all energy. So there's magnetic points, I think, that they've discovered in the heart, and that's part of what connects down with the earth and right back up to the sun. But that's it. We're nature. You grind me up and I become dust. Just put me in the earth. In my belief. Of course, there are people who believe differently, but that's okay as well.
Yeah, no, I believe we're on the planet. It's we're a part of it, and we need to live as a part of it.
Yeah, and not try to harness it.
No, exactly. Remember our place. Yeah.
Within one as a whole. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think when we do that, life becomes amazing, and it's completely possible for us to live alongside nature without destroying it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, with it, I mean, together within it. It doesn't have to be side by side. We are all as one. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's hope that that's a message people can take from this conversation. We can live as one with nature, and to take control of your own health and your well-being, and to be aware. Make sure you're aware. And rather than tell them that, to maybe ask if you've listened to this and it's made you think a little bit, and you wake up tomorrow or you find yourself under a lot of stress, like you said about, and you feel that tension in your stomach, or you're not moving properly, what's going on? And what's one small action that you could take to release some of that? And it doesn't have to be big. It can be 2 minutes standing at the back door, allowing the sun to hit your face, or the moon. And that's enough. But what is that one little thing that you could gift to yourself with that allows you to disconnect and de-stress?
Absolutely. I think that's a great bit of advice to finish it with. I want to thank you for coming on and for sharing your story and your expertise with us. It's been very interesting.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great to be here, and maybe we'll get you on the podcast too, and we can talk about the communication we have with our bodies between the gut and the brain, and get some of your expertise, because you clearly have a lot of it.
Yeah, I'd be up for that. Absolutely. That would be great.
Fantastic.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on. We will see everyone again next week. Thank you for listening, and let's get optimal together.